hope you guys are having a fantastic day. It is a sunny, beautiful 60-degree winter day in middle Georgia. So I'm like smack dab right in the middle of the state of Georgia. And it's a little cool from the wind, but I mean, 60 degrees in February, I'll take it. Anyway, I'm so excited you guys are joining me today for the farmers market tulips, and thank you so much for all those that joined me last weekend for the springtime wreath. Had such a great response, and I appreciate you guys. So no live next week. My next live will be the 21st of February. But let's get started on this. So this piece I designed a couple years ago, and I taught this piece at the Creative Painting Convention in Vegas, one of my favorite conventions to attend. Had a great response to it, and as I was thinking of things, you know, for lives, this just has always been one of my favorites. I just love the vibrancy of the colors. It's springtime, and I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready for flowers to start blooming and for spring to get here. So we're gonna paint this. Let me move that to the side. And these stencils, so I don't get paint on them. Put those over there. All right, so I went ahead and transferred my pattern. So if you bought the pattern packet, you know, I do my line drawings life size. Like this is the exact line drawing from my piece. And then, you know, you have to tape it together. So I taped it all together, and I went ahead and transferred my pattern on just to save some time today. There's a little bit of a glare there. So I'm going to use the DecoArt Media, but I'm also going to show you the substitutions, okay? So Dioxin Purple. The difference between these regular Americana acrylics is the solids and the binders they have in them is different than the fluid acrylics. The fluid acrylics are transparent for the most part, with the exception of white and Titan Buff. And they have a very heavy pigment load. So the colors are so vibrant and so pretty. But listen, I have purple tulips, pink tulips, and even white tulips. And you pick whatever colors to substitute and create whatever color tulips you want. And you can make them all one color if you wanted to. So I base coated my purple with purple and Payne's Gray, okay? If I'm using Americana, I would use Dioxin Purple and a touch of either Payne's Gray or a touch of black, just to make it nice and dark. Ooh, seeing lots of you join on. Thanks for being here. So, and then my pink tulips, I'm going to use quinacridone magenta. And if I were using an Americana, there really is not a shade that's super close to this one. However, you could use Berry Cobbler, which is a new color, and it's so pretty. Razzleberry, Royal Fuchsia. And if you wanted to take the color up a notch, you could add a little bit of that alizarin crimson to that, okay? So I'll move that. And I listed all of these in the pattern packet, all the substitutions and everything. And then my white, I almost said daisies, hello. My white tulips, I went ahead and painted them green. Because of course, you know, white things are not just white. They have to have some touch and hint of another color, gray or blue, or, you know, I just loved the way this green made those tulips pop. So now here's the funny story on the stencils. So I'm looking all week, I'm thinking, okay, I need to grab this stencil. Every single day I kept telling myself, go grab this stencil. So this morning I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go get this stencil. Guess what I can't find? I have zero clue where this stencil is. One of the very first comments on this live, I went ahead and put the link to the stencil. It is on Patty Rollinson's website, creativeartslifestyle.com. Again, the number is in the second comment or third comment at the very top there. Right before I went live, I put that on there for you. So I've ordered one because I love this stencil, and I have stencils all over my kitchen table. I should have taken a picture and shared that with you guys. So I'm going to use a different stencil for today's live. I'm going to use this other stencil that I love. And it's, again, this one is available on Patty Rollinson's site. I put the number in the comments. And I thought this was really pretty. I could hang this, right inside my doorway or on my front door. So I'm not going to do the leaves. I'm just going to do the Home Sweet Home. And I wanted to share with you this piece. So similar to the one I did last week, and then I ombre'd the stencil. So, did it one color and then brought a little bit of that purple back in. But isn't that just so pretty? With those two tones, and it just ties in the hydrangeas and the daisies. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a really cool trick, stenciling. Now, the one thing with this surface is you do want to make sure that the holes are straight across so that when you go to stencil on any words, they are, they're straight. Okay. So I'm going to move my chair out of the way and stand up. I paint much better standing. Let's get a little bit of painter's tape just so our stencil doesn't move on us. Because what I want to do is I'm going to line this up, and I love that this is exactly 12 inches. But I want to do a little bit of a shadow. So I'm going to slide it to the left just a little bit. Let's make sure that's straight. Okay, it's looking straight. So I'm just going to tape that in place. And let's get some raw umber. Okay, you can use asphaltum. You can use black. Let's get rid of that. Little bit of raw umber. And I think this stencil, when I ordered it on Patty's site, was on sale. So I went ahead and ordered a couple just so that I don't lose it. I ordered two so I can have one in my stash and one maybe as a giveaway. All right, let's do that. And then again, I'm going to use my Stencil Pro. I just got these in, just listed them on my website. And we want to take a paper towel, load up our stencil brush. Again, I'm using raw umber. You can use asphaltum, burnt umber, and then I'm going to wipe most of it off. Okay? It's easier to layer and add more color to your stencil than it is to have a brush fully loaded and have it seep underneath. You have a big mess to clean up if you do that. I also don't tend to stencil this way. That stippling motion kills my hand. So I'm going to use a soft circular motion, and I have a very loose grip on my brush. Soft circular motion, counterclockwise, and then switch it up and go clockwise. That's going to pick up all the paint that's building up on the edge of the stencil if you go in one direction. So make sure to switch it up. Counterclockwise and clockwise. I'm just trying not to get into that leaf right there. Now with this one, it's going to go over a leaf, and that's fine. I will put that back in if I cover it up when I paint my leaf, which most likely I will do. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit for just a second. I'm going to come right back up here. That's pretty dry. Come right back up there, load up my brush again, wipe it off, and stencil it again. So this is going to give me a really nice dark first layer. Soft circular motions. As you start to run out of paint, you can put a little bit more pressure on the brush. But again, you don't want to have so much paint and so much pressure that it seeps underneath. And see, I haven't had to reload it. It has enough on there, even though it might not look like it does. Okay. So let's lift that up. Awesome. Okay. Oh, and I really kind of like that stencil with this piece. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this stencil to the right just a little bit. Tape it back in place. All right, and I'm going to get another stencil brush. So let me just grab a different size. This is a 3/4, and we're going to use some quinacridone gold. If I were using an acrylic, I would use probably burnt sienna. This color, again, is kind of hard to duplicate. There really isn't an acrylic that is true to this quinacridone gold. It's one of my favorites. But burnt sienna will work. Okay, get some of that on the palette. Load up our brush. And again, let's wipe most of that off. I'm going to add the tiniest touch of Tighten Buff to my brush. What that's going to do is make it a little bit more opaque. All right, soft circular motions. Right over those letters. And try not to, I'm having a feeling I might get into that little space right there. And you can always take tape and, block those things off so that you don't get paint there. I'm being a little risky today. I'm just gonna, if it happens, it happens, and I either get it off or I stick a leaf over it. All right, so a little more Tighten Buff, a little more quinacridone gold, wipe it off on a paper towel. Soft circular motions, clockwise, counterclockwise. Let it sit for just a second. I'm going to reload my brush. And you could hit it with the heat tool if you wanted to, but it's drying pretty quick. So I'm going to go right back over it. Okay, little Tighten Buff, little quinacridone gold. And if you've not checked out Patty Rawlinson Creative Arts Lifestyle.com's, she has some of the coolest stencils. She has a new company called Studio R12. And if you're into doing signs, oh my gosh, she has a stencil for just about everything. Okay, so let's lift that up. Awesome. All right, I see a couple little places like this. There's a groove. There's like grooves that go in here. And so I'll let this completely dry and I can come back and fix it up with my background color. Now, I did not have buttermilk on hand. So what I use to do my background, which is very similar to my other, my original, is the DecoArt Chalky Gesso. This stuff is fantastic. Makes your surface super smooth, very suede-like, and it just takes paint beautifully. So that's what I used, and I'll come back and I can clean up. Well, let me just show you. I could take my angle brush, pick up a little bit of that on my angle brush, and fix up any lines or any marks where that brush might have gone because of that groove. And just tweak it a little bit. And then the other thing is I really am not a big fan of, I love stencils because they're the quickest, easiest way to get a word onto a piece. That's also one of the quickest ways to ruin a piece is by doing some hand lettering if your hand lettering's not so great, and mine isn't. So if I can use a stencil or transfer it on with transfer paper, it's going to look so much better. Okay, but I'm not a big fan of the way it looks like it's a stencil, meaning the letters. So I will take a liner brush, a little bit of Tighten Buff, a little bit of quinacridone gold, try and match the color as close as possible. And then come in and fill in. Well, let me get a little bit of raw umber here too. Okay. The other place that has some amazing stencils for designs, for letters, for words, is Cover Distributing. So my liner brush doesn't want to work today. Do you guys ever have that where your brush is like, yeah, not today, I'm not working? Okay, and just fill in those little bridges. I'm just going to jump around. I'm not going to sit here and do it for all, but I will finish it and finish all those off and clean up all those lines that maybe went a little astray. Okay, let's get that. So on your shadow, you might need to come back with a little bit of raw umber. Okay, but hopefully you get the gist that this is going to help you clean up those bridges. Let's get these are more obvious. I'll get that. To me, it just looks like you hand lettered it, even though you didn't. So don't be afraid to go back in and fill in those bridges and clean up anything around the edges that, you know, again, might have gotten a little wonky. All right, so let's move on to our tulips. I'm going to work on the, let's come up here to the, you know what? Let me switch gears. I'm going to go ahead and go to the stems and to the leaves. So I have my number 8 flat brush. And I'll pick up a little bit of sap green. If you're using Americana, you can use plantation pine. You can also use a little bit of black with that. Let me just zoom in here. We'll get right up here on the very top. So welcome, guys. See lots of you popping on. So I see a question real quick about stencils. So again, you can go to this website right here, creativeartslifestyle.com. That's Patty Rawlinson. And she has a ton of really good stencils. And also cdwood.com. That's Cover Distributing. All right. So let's tackle some of these stems and leaves. Not sure I'm going to do all of them on this live, but I will definitely explain to you how I did them. Sap green, a little bit of Payne's gray. How about if we bring my palette in here just a little so you can see. Okay, so sap green, Payne's gray, or plantation pine, and a little bit of black. And I'm just going to rebase my leaf. And if you saw the live last week with the hydrangeas, I used white when I did those leaves. But I'm going to show you how you can now take that same color combination, and I'll take a little bit of green, a little green gold. And if you're using Americana, citron green will work. And then a little bit of Titan Buff. Now, Titan Buff is going to give this, it's going to tone it down a little. The white brightens it. This Titan Buff has a color very similar to like light buttermilk or buttermilk. And so it's going to give you a different shade of green. And so let me just, it has a little bit of a glare on there, doesn't it? So I'm going to swipe that across the leaf. Swipe that on. Leaving that dark. Try not to cover all that dark up. Okay, so a little sap green, green gold, little Titan Buff. Mix it together. Swipe it across a paper towel. And swipe it onto the leaf. We're going to do the same exact thing for the stems. Okay, but look at that line right there. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so sap green, Payne's gray. Let's take care of these little stems. These little stems have very little detail to them. Again, they're sap green, Payne's gray with a little bright color to them. I'm going to repaint all of my leaves one at a time so that I can add that color wet on wet. It's my preferred way to paint. Unless I'm dry brushing, and I love to dry brush too. So this one was painted wet on wet. Now a little sap green, green gold, little Titan Buff, swipe it across my paper towel, and I'm going to lightly brush it onto the, wiped off too much, lightly brush it onto the stems. Okay. Swipe it back on the leaf. Just like that. Right? I have such a glare on here. I'm gonna see if I can prop this up with a little, what you call it there, my tape. And then again, come back down to the stems. Sap green, Payne's gray. Paint in the leaf. Wipe off your brush. Sap green, green gold, touch of Titan buff. Pull it back on that leaf. And that little ridge right there, see what it just did? It caught my paint, caught my brush. So you can just take a clean little brush and push that right back into the leaf. Now the next color I love to use on the leaves with this color combination, and this is a little, you don't have to do this, but what I love is that it goes over that green gold. This is the cobalt teal hue. You can also use a little bit of Laguna, and it just gives it a little fresh green color. So a little pop of that on your leaves, oh, just looks so pretty. So I'm going to pick up some of that cobalt teal hue. Let's mix that. Picked up the wrong color. And let's swipe it on this leaf right here. So I'm just going to like hold the handle of my brush sideways and swipe some of that color on the leaf. See how bright and just it bumps it up a notch, and I think just adds such a pretty color. And I don't add it on all of them too much. Wipe it with your finger. A little on the stems. I haven't done that one yet, so okay. So let's do a few more. Sap green, Payne's gray. We'll do some over here. And then after I do the tulips, if we have more time, I'll do some more leaves. Get this stem right there. Wipe it off. So sap green, green gold, and a little bit of Titan buff. And again, I always come to my paper towel just to swipe off that excess. It's easier to build the layers than it is to take away a whole bunch of paint. Okay, and then swipe that brush back. And when it picks up that wet, dark base color, it just flows into the that light, but just kind of gives you oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? It just blends. It kind of feathers through. So very light pressure. I'm not pushing hard at all. Wipe it away with your finger wherever you don't want it. Okay. Now, let's get a little bit of that blue on those. And again, colors on the stems and leaves, sap green, Payne's gray, or plantation pine, and some lamp black. Then my bright color is going to be plantation pine, citron green, and a little bit of light buttermilk or buttermilk. All right, so now let's take a little bit of the cobalt teal hue or Laguna and brush that on. It just, I wish you could see it in person, but I'm going to put it up close so you can see it. It just gives a brighter, pretty greeny blue that looks fresh and to me so pretty. Now, once we're done, I'll come back and shade in between all here, darken up the base of the leaves, separate, you know, where we have things touching. See, someone just asked if I use flow medium. Only if I'm using regular Americana acrylics do I use a little bit of flow medium, the Josanya flow medium. I'm going to grab it. So right here. Okay. So a little bit of the Josanya flow medium or the clear glaze medium. Now the media line has a little bit of a sheen to it. So the sheen is a little on the satin side, not gloss. So if I were going to use, and I wanted that kind of sheen, the clear glaze medium works brilliantly. All right. All right, so let's move on from the leaves and stems. Again, I'll come back, but I really am ready to get onto these tulips. So let's do the purple ones first. I'm going to use some Dioxin Purple and white. Let me get some white out here. Thank you, sister. Thanks for being here. Okay, y'all don't forget this is recorded too, so you can go back and watch it. I'm going to try real hard just to concentrate on painting, and I don't have a Renee like Miss Tracy does where I can have him look at the comments. I tried to talk my husband into it, but he was like, yeah, that's not happening. Although I think his sweet southern voice on here would be really nice, but he's not. So, gonna do it. So, purple. I used purple and Payne's Gray on the base. Now I'm going to come back with purple, and I'm just going to rebase this in. And I don't know if you can see it, but when I do the back, I do it in the direction that that petal's laying, so I can see it. The paint stroke of my brush is helping me see the separation between those. But if you're worried that that's going to be taken away, do the back first, and then you can do the front. And I'll do that on the next one to show you. All right, purple still in my brush, a little bit of white. I'm going to start over here, so a little bit of white on my brush, and I'm going to pull it down. Now, did you see that? Let me show you again with my hand out of the way. You want to go with the direction of the petal. So I know that this one's going to curve, so I'm going to curve my brush as I'm pulling it. Just like that. Now see how that wet paint's feathering through that wet paint? Oh, love it. Okay, and then this one, gonna have it go right there. And the fix, if you get too much white, the fix is always just to back up and go right over with some Dioxin Purple. A little bit of white. And I don't want it as bright back here, but I am going to pull a few little strokes right along that edge. Maybe even wipe it with my finger. Now, once we're done doing all the tulips, we'll come back and kind of reevaluate where we might need to add something a little brighter, add a little shading. Like on this one, I kind of went a little too far. I'm going to wipe off my brush, take a little purple, and just kind of swipe it up. Well, have white on your brush, Sandy. It's going to be white. Hello. There we go. Okay, so let's do another purple one. And I'm just going to continue to turn this. I'll go to, let's do this one right here. Move my palette over so that you can see as I'm loading my brush. Okay, so a little Dioxin Purple. Just base coat that whole flower again. Pick up a touch of white. See my touch? Very, very, very little. Kind of work it into the brush. Swipe it across the paper towel just so you make sure you don't have too much, and I'm going to pull it down. Pull. Okay, a little bit more white. Oops, went right over that one. And this is another thing, if I could give you any tip on painting these that's going to help you the most, do not go over it too many times. Like I just went over that same area 3 times, and what it's done is it's completely made it into one color. So a lot of times before you go and you do the second stroke, stop yourself. Say, does it really need it? Hold it back, look at it. See, it picked up that white a little bit better for me there. And they're a little too much, so we'll put a little purple there, just like that. All right, tiny touch of white, and just the hint of color on this petal in the back here. Okay, now look how those two just became one. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of Dioxin Purple, tiny touch of Payne's Gray, and I'm going to slide right in here and take that space back. All right. You get to tell that brush what to do. And some days mine listens to me, and other days it doesn't listen at all. So let's move to another purple one. Let's do this one right here. Okay. Now this one's a little bit more cupped. So again, a little purple, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And it's all in how you pull the stroke with the lighter color, with the white. So pick up a little white, work it into my brush, off on a paper towel. Now I'm right in here, that's the back petal, and I'm just gonna pull. And I want to come around. So see how I started this way and pulled at an angle, almost like a comma stroke. Ooh, let's get that a little bit further up. Same here, I'm going to pull and curve it. So that gives it more of that bulb shape. And this one goes right over. That red one is going to go, actually, I got my pattern right on each other, because on my original, they're not even touching. But it's easier just to go over it. And if I want to put this one over, I can always come back in and base it over my purple one. But to stop or to try and start here and start here, it's just too broken. So you can always put it back in. Okay? Wipe off your brush, pull a little bit back here. And oftentimes when I get done doing these, I realize they're a little on the bright side. So you can come back with just a wash of color of purple to take that down just a bit. Now, if I wanted to add a little bit more of like a oomph right there and curve it down, now I'm gonna let it sit for a minute. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of cobalt teal hue. Now, this looks so pretty on this purple. So let me hold that up so you can see it. See that cobalt teal hue? Kind of like the hydrangeas I did last week. That blue almost becomes a shade of purple, especially when you mix it with that Dioxin Purple. So put that heavy white there so that that shows up a little more. And then I'll soften it with a little bit of white. But oh, just love that blue color. All right, so let's move on to our magenta. Some days the brushes listen to me, some days they don't. Is the truth, Denise. I'm sure we all know it, right? Some days they cooperate, and some days it's just like, nope, wash me and put me to bed for right now because I'm not going to work. Okay, so my pink tulips, quinacridone magenta. If you're using acrylics, maybe berry cobbler, razzleberry. You could use, you know, carousel pink, magenta is a new color. Do I have that one? I don't have that. But I would, you know, just to kind of get a little bit darker tint, you can add a little bit of that alizarin crimson to the berry cobbler. But I'm going to use quinacridone magenta and white. And let's rinse out that brush and come right here to our Magenta Tulip. Okay, and I'm going to turn it this way and get my palette on there so you can see. A little bit of white. So see, I have that pink still in my brush, wiped it off, picked up a little bit of white, work it in, swipe it across a paper towel. Okay, so with the chisel edge, I'm going to touch and I'm going to pull. And I want to go with the direction of that petal. A little bit more white. Oops, didn't work that in. And I'm going to do something on purpose to show you. Because again, sometimes I think half the lesson is knowing how, or one of the biggest parts of the lesson is knowing how to fix something that maybe you just don't like. All right. So on this one, there's a little bit of a glare, isn't there? And again, it says fluid acrylics. Let me clean up that right there. So if I need to go back over, like where it's too white, pick up just a little bit of the quinacridone magenta. Brush over it. You know, I don't have to go right back down to base coat with the quinacridone magenta and a little bit of Payne's gray. Okay, and the other thing that's going to really help these to pop is when we come back at the end and we add a little bit of shading. Okay, I can come from the bottom and then just a little bit of that white. Kind of pull it on that back area. Okay. So that one's quite pink and quite bright, but I'm liking it. So let's move to this one. I'm just going to move it so I can show you the flower and my palette. Wipe that off. And again, I base coated these with quinacridone magenta, a little bit of Payne's gray. That's why you've got that nice dark, rich color. Wipe off the brush, a little bit of magenta, touch of white. Swipe it across a paper towel. Let's see how this one goes. This one kind of flares out a little bit here. A little bit of white. And this one, right on that leaf. So I'm just going to do that and then wipe it off. Okay. And then just a tiny touch in the back. Now remember, that in the back is going to be a little on the bright side. So you can always come back with the magenta. And when we come in and add some more shading there, that will also take care of that area to not look so kind of sketchy with those strokes. Bump up that color a little. Okay. So getting those pink ones on. Now let's do, let's see, we did 3 purple. Let's go ahead and do this pink one right over here. Oop, I can't put my paint over there. I don't know if y'all know this about me, but if you've taken a class with me, you know you've heard me say it before, that if you are right-handed, put your paint on your right-hand side of your piece. It will help you not have to do arm aerobics the whole time. So I forgot to put a little bit of that blue. I want to put a little bit of that cobalt teal hue on these purple flowers. But anyway, same with your water basin. My water basin and my paint is on my right-hand side. Just look at how that cobalt teal hue just helps that purple shine. Okay, oh, love that. So let's do this pink one right here. Little magenta. Paint's gray, we'll base coat that in again. I'm gonna have a little blue in my brush. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe that out. Little magenta still in your brush, a little bit of white, work it in. And this one, the petal comes, and you know what? Look at this. I'm gonna improvise and show you that if you have, this just kind of stops. So I'm just gonna extend this out to about there, even if it's not on the pattern. Remember, the pattern's just there to guide you. A little more white. So very little pressure. I'm just touching and sliding. Touch and slide. Too much, wipe it with your finger. Little magenta, little white, mix it together, swipe it across a paper towel. And I'm not going to get real close to that edge because I don't want it to be so bright going right off the edge there. And then a little bit back here. Okay, so I moved my tape. Okay, so we've got the two purple, or the three purples, the three pinks done there. Now, bumping the color back up, it needs, some of them just need a little something else. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of white, like on this one. And maybe not across the whole petal, but just in a couple places, add just a brighter little stroke of color. Same thing with the purple. Little bit of white, mix that in. I was just reading Robin's comment that she can't keep her hand out of her palette, so she's lefty and she puts her paint on the right hand side. And my thing is, if it works for you, do it. Okay, a little bit of purple, little white. And so I don't have a lot of paint on my brush, and it's very sketchy kind of when it's coming off. Little purple, little white, swipe it across a paper towel. Just to bump up some of that color. Okay. I'm really, really digging this one. I don't know if you can see that blue. It's just so pretty on there. And I see that I went past my tulip there. I'll just come back in with some of that base coat color. But while we're over here, let's go ahead and take care of this guy. Just paint that in. A little magenta, a little white. Work that into the brush. Swipe it across a paper towel. You just kind of have to improvise. This, you know, the top of that tulip you can't see, so I just swipe some of that color on. Wipe off my brush, and I'm going to come in with a little bit of magenta, a little bit of Payne's Gray. And right in here, wipe some of that color right in. See how that just separated those two areas? I know we did it on this one as well, but I think it needs it again. And I tend not to do it with just Payne's Gray, whatever the color is. So pink for my tulip, I'll use a little bit of magenta in that Payne's Gray. For this, a little bit of Dioxin Purple and Payne's Gray, just so it's not so harsh. That needs a little bit more Payne's Gray. so it doesn't look just purple. Okay, a little bit of white. And I am going to fix up that right there. And a little bit right there, coming from the base. So that's just Payne's Gray, a little purple on there. Just kind of coming up from the base of that flower. Okay. Now, let's go to the white tulips. And all I did for those was base coated it with sap green. So again, I'm using the fluid acrylics. So either sap green, plantation pine, you can use black forest, just a nice dark green. So with the sap green, I'm going to base coat. This one's going to be white. I have green in my brush still, but I'm going to wipe it across my paper towel, pick up some white, work it into my brush, and then I'm going to pull, pull, pull. Now, these flowers most definitely are going to look like green tulips for a while. We have to get that initial color on there and then come back and bump that color up once it has had a chance to dry. So let's curve that a little bit. Okay, so look how that's kind of streaky. It has a little bit of green in it, has some white. But now I'll take and wash out my brush. Get a little bit more white. Work that into my brush. And pull that heavier white color. Very light pressure, not really pushing or pulling hard. Okay. Now, this right here is a little too streaky for me, so I'll come back with a little bit of white, kind of soften that and tone it down. Okay, and then let's dry this with the heat tool real quick. So I'm using my Ranger Heat It tool. They have these available on cdwood.com. Also Dick Blick. It's very quiet. Rinse out my brush. I kind of just want to, yep, quick and dry. All right, so now I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Gray and Sap Green on my brush, just a little on the corner. You can use an angle brush, but since I have this number 8, I'm just going to use that. I kind of want to regain some of this space, so I'll come in here, and then notice how this is very straight. I want to change that. I want to make this look a little more rounded. So you can use that background color. You can come in, oops, let's get a little bit more Payne's Gray. A little bit of Sap Green. Kind of notch away a little bit right there. Just going to lightly touch it with my finger. All right, a little bit of white. Round that out just a little more. Okay. Now let's move on from that. Again, it's going to have shading. The shading is really going to help those white tulips especially. But let's go to this one. Again, Sap Green or Plantation Pine. Wipe off that brush really well. Pick up white, work it into your brush. I'm just going to pull a couple little strokes here on the back petal first. Wipe off my brush, a little bit more white, work it in. Wiping off your brush in between before you pick up more white, especially before you go to your white on your palette, because you don't want to make your white on your palette a different shade of green. All right. So that's why I don't load a whole bunch of paint, because I don't want to have to wipe off a whole bunch. Just a little bit, work it in. Touch and pull. Ooh, kind of loving that color, but not loving the shape of the petal. So we're going to change it. A little bit more white. Again, it's gonna be green for a while. It's gonna be in that ugly stage until you add more white and a little bit of shading. Okay. A little bit of white. Thank you, Cheryl, for popping that link up there for me. For the stencils. It is also in the comments at the very, very beginning. I put in for the stencil I used today, since I could not find mine, and the Farmer's Market stencil. Both those links are in the comments, and I will also post them afterwards. All right, let's add, let's do this white tulip right here. Turn my piece. I need a little bit more clean white. Pick up some sap green. Let's see which one we're doing. This one. Just kind of base coat that in. Oh, this one doesn't have a stem. So we're just gonna pop a stem right in there. A little bit of white. Wipe off your brush. A little more white, work it into the brush. Okay, this one I think we're going to bring it right around the front there. See, too many times. Should have stopped. That's okay, I'll come back and fix it up. Make it brighter. Okay, see how this this outline, so it's where I base coated in. You don't really leave anything like that. So, you know, if you've got to take a liner brush or just the corner of your brush, and make sure that you have a little color on there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and paint this leaf. Little sap green, little green gold, little bit of Titan Buff is my light color. Remember, work that in, swipe it across your paper towel. You just swipe right down those leaves. And I love those long, very kind of ridged, textured tulip leaves. So if you get those little streaks in there, that's completely fine. That's what I'm going for. Wipe it off, pick up a little bit of the cobalt teal hue, swipe that on. Wipe off my brush. I like to do this and fix this if it happens pretty much right away. Let's see if I can get that glare off. You know, if you go outside, you can just take a clean brush, come back in, pick up some of that color, or come in with the background color and take it away. Okay. Now let's come back to the white petals. Again, my biggest tip on those is once you get them done, come back, try not to make them super white. Let me show you mine. Look how not, I mean, there's no clean white really on here. Very little, just straight white, if any. You have all these different colors. And then look at the back petal. It has that tone of that white mixed with a little bit of green still. So it's going to make these petals look like they're in front of and that behind. And same thing, look at this one. Again, not so in your face white. Has lots of different colors to it. So I am going to come back with a little bit of fresh white. I'm just going to swipe it in a couple of places. But again, I still have a little bit of that green in my brush, so it's still going to pick some of that up. A little bit there. A little too far. Again, just wipe it with your finger. See how I just wiped that and it went right into that base color. Now let's go to an angle brush. Pick up a little bit of sap green and Payne's gray just on the toe of the brush. So if you're not familiar with an angle brush, there's the toe and that's the heel, and I have paint just on that right there. And then when I blend it, see it's slightly damp. I'm just going to work it into that toe, flip your brush over and work it in on the other side. And then don't touch your piece with that hand. And I'm just going to bring this right in here at the base of that back petal. And then I'll use the heel just to kind of soften it out. I don't want it to be real harsh, you know, and definitely not a line. Okay, just a little floated color. If you need to float color in between those petals, you can do so, and also bring a little bit up from the base of those petals. See how right there just adds in a little bit more of that green? I think just makes those white tulips shine. So again, that's sap green and Payne's gray on the toe of the brush. Kind of fix that up. If you need to bring it back down into here, you can. In fact, let me show you another. I'm going to pick up a little bit more. And if I wanted this petal to come back and look like it's bowed even more, I can come in with this color, take away some of that petal right there. Okay, do you see how that now just made it look like it's curled? Regaining that space and taking away will allow you to do that. Let's pick up a little bit more white. Not with that brush. That didn't work very well. Okay, and then a little bit more on that toe. Then I can pull up some color from the base. Just on that white. Now, where I picked up with the toe, a little bit of that white, it's a little too much. So I'm just going to come back, soften that. Let's pick up a little bit of white, a little bit of green in my brush. There. Okay, so I put the green back in. I'll let it sit, and I'll add some more white. Let's go to this one. Pick up a little more white, just a touch, work it in, wipe off your brush, swipe down your tulip petal, again, making sure you're going with the shape of the petal. I do want to add a little bit more white right there. Okay, so there you have your white tulips and their shading. Now let's go to the pink one, same exact way with a little bit of, hi Sheila. Hi you guys, thanks so much for being here. I just looked up at my screen. Happy you guys are here. And then I'm not just painting by myself. A little bit of Payne's gray, a little bit of Dioxin Purple. I know it's Super Bowl Sunday. You guys have to leave a comment. Let me know who you're rooting for, or do you even care? But I don't even know what time it started. It's probably going on right now. All right, so on the toe of my brush, little Dioxin Purple, a little bit of Payne's Gray, and if you need to kind of come in and do a tiny little float on that back petal right there, see how that'll make that stand out? This is dark enough. I don't need to do that. But again, coming in, I can bow this out a little bit more if I wanted to. Just like that. Again, to make that petal look like it's kind of cupped. And I lost over here, I did lose that kind of separation, and not all of them have to be completely separated. I like that this one is separated down here, but then it connects and touches this petal. So if I don't want to separate them, what I could still do is bring in some of that dark here. Again, fix up the edge of that petal, and then I can just slide that right down that petal right there. Okay, so see how that separated it enough with that Payne's Gray and Dioxin Purple. We don't want any of that to look like a line. And just like I did on the other, obviously didn't think that this one needed a stem. I'll put that stem right in. Okay, now this one over here. Let's get Dioxin Purple, a little bit of Payne's Gray. And again, you can kind of come in at the base. Get a touch more water on my brush. Tone down that back just a little bit. A little more purple. And I kind of want to bring that out right to there. Okay, so now that looks like that's on the left side of that. This is the front side of it. And I really like my shading, you know, on both those. So I'm not going to do any more on the purple one there. Okay, so we have our purple, our pink. Let's bump those up a little bit, and our white. We don't think we added shading to the magenta one. If we did, I need to add more because it's obviously lacking. A little bit of magenta and Payne's Gray. No, I definitely did not. Okay, and again, remember you can kind of make that a little jagged if you want to instead of straight across. You can use the heel of that brush just to kind of soften it if you need to. But again, nothing that's a straight line. And then I'm gonna float that color right down there. Separate those petals just a little bit more. This is magenta and a little bit of Payne's Gray. And I want to just separate right here. And then you can add a little bit of that just along the base of that petal. Pull it up with your finger. Same thing over here. Okay. Now, look how much brighter this one is compared to this one. These haven't gotten an additional dose of bright. Plus, remember when I did this one, I went back and I put white and then I put some pink over it. So you can play with those, especially if you're using the fluid acrylics, because they layer, you're just going to get some super pretty effects. Now you can do that with acrylics too. You can use some glazing medium or some flow medium or just a little bit of water sometimes, almost like a wash. Okay, let's move to this one right here. Again, a little magenta, a little Payne's Gray on the toe of my brush only. I'm going to come in here, regain a little bit of that space. Use the heel. I do that a lot of times use my finger, but the heel, I have a little bit more control of where that's going to go. All right, let's make something of this. Right now, it's just not doing anything for me. So with that color, let's take away. Needs a little bit more Payne's Gray. regain that. I'm just going to soften it on both sides. So I wipe my brush off and I'm just kind of softening that on both sides so it's not so harsh. And then with my number 8, let's pick up a little white, swipe it across a paper towel. Ooh, oh, I love that. So let me hold it up and show you. So there again, one reason I love to paint wet on wet. So I based in that back, you know, a little float of dark color, and look how it picked it up right there on that white. That's my number 1 rule in painting. If you like it, leave it. If you don't, we'll figure out a way to fix it. But I'm gonna try not to cover it up. Okay, I have too much white on that. So I'm just gonna stroke over it again. Now on this petal, we'll want to come back definitely and add a little bit of shading right along that edge. Okay, you don't want it as bright there as it is there. So a little magenta, a little Payne's gray. Work that in. We'll just kind of swipe it right up from there. Just like that. Okay, much better. Or as I like to say to my husband, that's mo better. It's mo better. I really am, I'm really loving how pink this one is. And on my original, they're not really that pink. Let me show you. They're a little bit more along the lines of these, okay? Not as much white, hello. But again, that brightness is really doing it for me today. So I am gonna come back. And this isn't in the instructions, but you'll have the video to watch. And again, put a little bit of that pink on the white. To brighten it up. Okay. So we have our pink tulips, our purple tulips. Again, adding a little bit of that cobalt teal hue into the purple tulip, shading them. The white tulip starts green and ugly, and then building a little bit of that white color up. Not too much. Again, they're not super white. Just gonna swipe on a little bit of color. Oop, have a little bit of pink in there. Okay. So, one last little step on a painted element, and then we'll do a little bit of shading. I'm not going to do them all the way around. You get the gist of, you know, how to paint the purple ones, the pink ones, the white ones, and the leaves. But I do have these little flowy strokes here and there. I like the way that just gives it a little bit of movement. So just in a few places. Let me show you. I'm going to rinse my brush really, really well. Tap it off on a paper towel, but leave some of the moisture in there. And then you're going to pick up, I'm using sap green. You can use a little plantation pine. If you're using the regular acrylics, you want to make sure you use a little bit more water for this, because we do want this to be a little more on the transparent side. So let me figure out where I'm going to put one of these. I'll do it right here. Okay, so my number 8 has some inky green paint, and I'm going to sit on the corner of the brush, push, pull, slide as you gradually lift up on that pressure to paint a little comma stroke. Okay, so let's do that again. I don't have one on the original, but I'm feeling like it needs it here. push, let me move up a little, push, pull, slide on the chisel edge and lift. Push, pull, lift. Okay. Now that one is going straight down. So, bye-bye. I'm going to get rid of that one. Have to use some background color, but I don't like the way it goes straight down. So let's do one right here. Push, pull, slide on the chisel edge and lift. Push, pull, lift. Push, pull, lift. Push, pull, lift. Okay. And I am going to get some of my background color. Again, I did not have buttermilk, so I'm using the chalky gesso. This is beige. If you guys have not used this, so good. You can get it on decoart.com. I believe Maureen Baker. So Maureen, let me think. Hers is maureenbaker.com. And it comes in 6 different colors, and it's just the most amazing product to base coat your surfaces with. You can use it on metal, glass, plastic, wood. Like I said, I can come in and fix up any areas. I see some line drawing over here. Go over all that. Okay, so that's going to look really pretty, right, while we move on. Okay, so I'm going to go to a little bit of shading. My 3/4 inch angle brush, a little bit of Payne's Gray on the toe. And we just want to float a little bit of color right up underneath these. Bring it back, get a little bit of a drop shadow there. Oh, Sandy, just did that way too dark. Okay, remember I said earlier, Denise, my brushes, sometimes they're just like, nope, not doing that. I'm gonna switch to my number 8. Paint a little drop shadow, much better. Okay. And then right up underneath these. And if you got them on there and you're like, oh, those are a little on the dark side, you can always come back with your background color and do a wash over them. Okay, but I think it's so cool when you do it, especially like for these stems. In those little areas that you might not think to look, but would definitely have a shadow. Okay, let's get a little bit more Payne's Gray. Now, I just read a comment, and it reminded me of a tip I used to always give when I taught. I taught at Hobby Lobby for 12 years. I have some of my greatest friends that were students that I still am friends with today, which I love. So anyway, after you're done painting, instead of putting all your paint away, take your palette and just play. Take your palette and play with colors. Mix the colors. See what that, purple and blue mixed together look like. It is such a great way to teach yourself. And then if you like it, write the combination down. But it was one way that I really taught myself color mixing, was just going for it and playing. I'm trying to get clean Payne's Gray, and I keep picking up like purple or pink in it. So, okay. So again, just some of those shadows. And to me, that just kind of helps finish off that piece. I did them a little darker on here. Look on my finished one. I mean, I really lifted those up. I'm one that, you know, don't be a wimpy floater. You really want to put those colors on. You can always tone it down again with a little wash of that background color. And again, you can get this e-packet on my website, which is sandymctierdesigns.com. And last week hydrangeas, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Very cute. Yes, Janet. Too funny. All right, so let me come back up here so I can see you guys. I hope you enjoyed watching me paint the farmhouse. The farmer's market tulips. I do have another packet, farmhouse poppies. Again, I'll put links and go back and look at all of y'all's questions and make sure that I comment and answer those for you guys. Make sure I have none of the links on. Nope, looks like they're off. That's good. Anyway, you guys have a great Sunday. Thank you so very much for joining me, and happy painting and creating. Share with me if y'all paint this, okay? Y'all have a good day. Bye.